Sure. All righty, let's get started. It is such a great honor to be here today. And before we get started, I want to thank all of you for being here today. And a special thanks to SOFSA, the organizers, for this great work and for bringing us all together in this conversation about food justice. So this is a great opportunity. My name is Estelí, Jimenez-Soto. I'm a professor of agroecology, and I've served in the board of SOFSA for the past couple of years. And people in SOFSA have become my friends. And now I live in Tampa, in South Florida, where I teach agroecology. And it feels so wonderful, so warming to come back and see all our friends and make new ones. So our panel is titled, There Has Always Been Food Sovereignty on Haudenosaunee Land, Honoring Tradition and Destiny. And this panel is a storytelling session about what Indigenous food sovereignty means in Haudenosaunee land. Speakers today will share stories from the past and present about how food has shaped their life, their communities, and their personal identity. Through short stories, they will weave a path for food system transformation, rooted in justice and sovereignty. So I'm going to do some introductions for panelists today. We have Ethan Tayo, who's a dedicated enthusiast at Syracuse University alum and a citizen of the Mohawk Nation. His deep-seated position lies in infusing Indigenous principles into the world of entrepreneurship. Notably, Ethan has pioneered the establishment of the Three Sisters Garden on Syracuse University campus and the first Indigenous agricultural project to reclaim settler land. Thank you for doing that work. We have Sarah Patterson, who is a member of the Onondaga Nation Farm Crew and Onondaga Nation community member. Although born in Syracuse, Sarah's life journey led her to Onondaga Hill, where she was raised by her adoptive family. Her path was further shaped by her connection with the Tuscarora Nation after she met her husband Neil in 2001. For the past 3 years, Sarah and her husband have made home within the Onondaga Nation. She holds a deep affection for this area, recognizing it as the ancestral homeland of her people. Sarah's introduction to SOFSA came about through a collaborative partnership with the Onondaga Nation Farm. Thank you for joining us today, Sarah. And we have Curtis Waterman, who leads the Onondaga Nation hunting and fishing group. He also shares his musical talent as a jazz harmonicist, and he confessed to me that he did not bring his mom today, which made me very sad. And he's also a member of the SOFSA Advisory Board. Prior to working with SOFSA, Curtis served on the board of for the Onondaga Lake cleanup. Curtis was born and raised in the Onondaga Nation and sees participation in SOFSA as a way of, as he said in his report, upholding the obligation to the Gatawanda or to grow Wapum treaty, which is, again, in his words, allows us to communicate, learn, and have respect for one another in a peaceful way. We can share our traditional earth-friendly agricultural practices with the surrounding communities, and in turn, we can learn from our neighbors and establish friendships for future collaboration. Thank you for those wonderful words, Curtis. And now I want to welcome Sarah, who is going to do a Thanksgiving address to thank everything we see in the world, animals, and the celestial beings and the Creator. In this meaningful Thanksgiving address, it's going to help us ground ourselves in Indigenous wisdom for our family. Thank you, Sarah.
So as we gather today, I just wanted to share the history of the Thanksgiving address. Within our people, whenever we gather together to say this, I don't know if it's a prayer or it's a message to the universe, to the natural world of greetings and Thanksgiving. And it's different things. So if you can picture it in your mind of the things that I'm going to describe that is in this world as I see it, that way your minds can put out the energies and the things within yourselves. So it's an audience participation thing. After each thing, we usually say all together, now our minds are together as one. And when you hear that, we usually say either yeah, or sometimes people say to, T-O-H, but actually don't have to say anything. So I'm going to begin. I'd like to acknowledge all the people here on the earth. We all like to say it and sound, and we're here together as we share our backgrounds, come from different backgrounds, we're giving duties to live in balance and harmony with one another from the Creator. And so now we bring our minds together as one, and we give greetings and acknowledgement and thanks to each other. And now our minds are together as one. And so we bring our minds together and acknowledge Mother Earth. We send our greetings to Mother Earth, and she gives us all we need to live. She continues to do so as she always done. She supports our feet when we walk upon her. So we bring all our minds together and we give greetings, love, and gratitude to Mother Earth. And now our minds are together. And so now we turn our minds to the waters. All forms of waters. We have rivers, streams, trickling, roadside waters. We see it when driving along the ocean. They quench our thirst in waters. It cools us when we're hot. And it carries our babies in our lungs. So we give thanks and greetings to the spirits of the waters. Now our minds are together as one. And within those waters, we see the fish. And they're instructed to clean the water and feed us and nourish our bodies. Trout, salmon, pickerel, ocean fish, the big and the small. And now we turn our thoughts to and give gratitude and thanks and love to our fish relatives. Now our minds are together. And so often we see around us plant life. We have our food plants, what we harvest in the fields, in our gardens, the greens, the vegetables, the berries. We have our life sustainers, the corns, beans, and the squash. Otherwise known as the three sisters in our culture. We have the medicine plants, and they were instructed to take away our sickness. They heal our bodies. We have herbs and roots and various grasses. And the strawberry in particular are the leaders of our berries, and they're very important within our cultures and our big medicine. So we give thanks and love to our plant life relatives. So now our minds are together. And also when we walk around the earth, we see all sorts of animal life. Many things, and they have many things to teach us. We're honored to give up their life to use as our nourishment for our bodies and clothing, and their bones as tools. And the leader of our animals is the deer. So now our minds are together as one. And also we see about us as we walk around this earth, all tree life. We turn our thoughts to one of these trees. Each type of tree has its own purpose and duty. And the leader of the trees in our culture is the maple. They give us shelter, they give us shade, they give us fruit and beauty during certain times of the year. So we put our minds and our hearts up to the tree life, and now our minds are together as one. And so within the branches of the tree, we see the birds fluttering about, hopping from branch to branch. Our feathered relatives, they sing us songs, and that's their duty to create happiness within our hearts when we're feeling down and low. So they bring all sorts of positive energy. And each day they remind us to appreciate and enjoy life. So we put our minds together and give our love and gratitude to all bird beings. Now our minds are together as one. And also we have the four winds that come from all four different directions. We respect their power and their strength. They can be destructive. So we respect that. And we hear their voices in the morning and the breeze when we wake up. They refresh and purify the air that we breathe. And they help bring changes in seasons. So we put our minds together as one and thank our relatives for once. And also we hear sometimes the thunder beams. Right before it rains, our grandfathers do thunder beams. They come from the west and they bring the rain needed for our crops, for our food, and to renew life with the waters. And they also keep harmful beings underground, and we're grateful that they're still doing their duties. So now our minds are together as one. And also in the sky, we see the sun, our elder brother, the sun. Each day without fail, he travels the sky from east to west. He brings light to our days, he brings warmth, and he helps our seeds grow. So we give greetings and thanksgiving to our elder brother, the sun, and now our minds are together. And also, in the sky, there's the grandmother moon. She lights our night sky. And she's the leader of all female lights in all female cycles. And she governs the movement of the tides of the ocean. And so we give our gratitude and thanks and love to Grandmother Moon, and now our minds are together as well. And also, within the sky, we see the stars, little small orbs of light that light our way. They help the moon give us light and bring the dew to the growing things here on earth. And they tell us when our ceremonies are, and they guide us when we move about. And we give great thanks and gratitude for the success that we see at night. So now we match up together as well. And within our culture, we have enlightened teachers that come to us when we meet them. The Creator sent down beings through the ages who are instructed to help us to remember how to live in harmony and peace together as people. So for those enlightened teachers that we know, we say thank you, we love you, and we thank you for your messages. And so now our minds are together as one. And a certain teacher created to the Haudenosaunee people by the name of Hanson Lake. And the Creator sent him instructions to let us know how we live amongst each other, how we treat each other, and how we treat the natural world, and to give thanks for our natural world. And so for him, we are grateful. So now our minds together as one. And last but not least, we give thanks to our Creator, the Creator of all the living things that we have given thanks for. And we send thanks and love for his giving us all we need to live a good life. And he continues to provide for us together as well. And so now we're going to have this address that we enter words, and I've named a lot of things, and I know. So no apologies to the universe if I forgot anything. So if you can think of anything that I might have forgotten, put in your minds and give it out to the universe, and our minds are together.
Thank you, Sarah. That was really beautiful. Thank you for bringing us all together as one in this conversation about food and food sovereignty and nutrition. So a few weeks ago, or a few, yeah, maybe weeks, we had a chance to get together virtually, of course, because this is kind of how things work these days sometimes. And we had a really wonderful conversation about what we wanted to talk about today. And the panelists came up with 3 amazing questions that we would like to discuss today as the group, and we'd like to hear from you. So the first question I'm going to ask the panelists is, how has food shaped your life, your community, and your personal identity? We're going to start with them.
Hello. So how has food shaped my life? Pretty much had to grow up eating it, necessary for life, and now is currently my career, which I did not expect to happen. But for me, food was always a relationship. I grew up in a region that is a food desert, or food apartheid, now in a new language. where I didn't really understand nutrition. I didn't really understand what a food system was. We didn't really have access to food, where the closest grocery store was about a 20 to 30-minute drive. For people who don't have the access to a car or the money to go that far, it's very difficult to get healthy food, to grow healthy food, to have that knowledge. And for me, I didn't grow up traditionally, so I didn't know about this history. I didn't know about my culture, but I knew I needed food. And so coming here, I realized that even though I'm in a urban area with lots of people, we still have food deserts. I live downtown, and unfortunately, this can be classified as a food desert. I don't have access to a vehicle, and it's hard to get affordable food around here. So for me, a lot of it was, okay, there's a lot of problems that we can focus on. How can I individually understand these issues, and how do I as a person contribute to this? And so for me, it was really grounding myself in that relationship of regaining my knowledge of nutrition, of feeding my body well, nourishing it, and then beyond that, learning about the food system, learning how to cook, learning how to be sovereign, and be able to feed myself. Because if we can't feed ourselves, we can't feed our community, and we can't sustain our people. And so for me, what started off as a personal relationship has now grown into a community relationship of going around and meeting different people, hearing their stories, learning how we all connect around food, and then bring that to a discussion where we can then start making active change. Put in a lot of this action, because in the end, we all need food, and the best way to come together is around a nice meal.
Very nice. So for me, my story started off when I was adopted at 6 months old. I've always known I was Onondaga, but my parents never really could teach me anything about who I was. But I know that people have come to me during my life at different various stages when I needed them. It's been a long journey to learn everything I need, but for example, my neighbor across the street, she was Oneida, and she took me to various native functions around the city of Syracuse when I was little. And one of them was the Everson Museum of Art, where I learned how to make a canoe or something like that. But that was the first time I tried our corn soup, our traditional corn soup. And I remember thinking, what is this? I've never seen it before in my life. And so my neighbor introduced me to our traditional soup. And then in high school, my detention bus driver was Mohawk. His name was Frank, and I left a book on my seat when I got off the bus the next day, because I was in detention again. He gave me my book, and in my book was a note, and it said, I see you're interested in your culture, give me a call. And that was, wow, I get to learn more. So he took me to my first longhouse ceremony, where I had that soup again. Oh, there's that soup again. So the soup has been following me around. And then when I went to OCC, I joined the Native American Club, and they were, who is this person? Who I am? I don't know who I am. And it was your sister who was like, I'll figure this out. And so she went through the grapevine. And 2 days later, she said, I know who you are. I know where you came from. I know your family. I know your clan, Eel clan. And so it was through the OCC game that I went to more longhouse ceremonies and more of that nice soup. And then I met my husband there, and he grew the corn that's created to make that soup. And so I thought, all right, well, I want to learn all there is, so he's teaching me all sorts of things. And through his community at the Tuscarora Nation located in Niagara Falls area, we had husking bees, we had a feast every year, and we had the hunt where the men go out and get the deer for the feast. And so that brought me a sense of community that I was looking for. Surrounding our foods, they're very important, integral aspect of our culture. And so now I work at the Onondaga Nation Farm, and the search continues. And that's just my story. Thank you.
There has been on the land, one day it's the Indians, the day when you see thank you all. Thank you for coming. And on beaver plan. For the long haul, for the long. I think the name is in India. Which means, we can just put about things. The connotation in dirt. So, we're here to tell stories, so, my story. And it was, question, how has food shaped your life? I kind of look at it and say, well, how has food shaped me? How has food given me my shape? And, and also think about, they say you are the G. I kind of think about G. That's the other all. So, as I was born, and started in the very beginning, I also thought, right on. But before that, I lived with my grandmother for 5 years. And she was really in the culture, in the ceremonies, from the longhouse. And I learned culture from her. And from our extended families and my aunts and uncles. So I was recommended quite a few times by aunts and uncles as part of staying within the traditions and culture that have been shown. And then when we did get about it, they were my aunt, and she wasn't really, like, I remember the top of the language, so I knew what about you. But when I started talking by my aunt, she didn't know another language. She knew phrases and things, and so my language kind of went a bit. And I see a young gentleman up here in our window, and we were, she was Protestant, and at the church, I remember the very first day I walked into the church, there was a gentleman on the wall, he was actually on a cross, and people like it, you know. And I saw that, and I was like, and they also never been anything. But so I became part of the church, played the piano, lit the candles. And then I wanted me to teach the younger kids the gospel and all that, and I even flew the church. And I got to the point where I said, yeah, this is too much. You want me to give a sermon too? You know, so I kind of got in the church at that point, and then in high school. And started thinking, maybe I should start bringing back to the Longhouse and get that into the ceremony. So I did it. And then I was kind of another end of the big job. I tried to college student, listened to the music, Syracuse, I'm like, oh, Syracuse, go see the video, I'm all in Portland, Trenton State, a lot of credits. It's not. I ended up getting a job, and that's where I stayed for 20 years. Care office equipment. And what I noticed was that some of the technicians you were calling would go into an office and take care of what the customer called for, which is the symptom. It would take care of the symptom, fix the symptom, and leave. And our company at the time was happy if that system came back. Well, every 11 days, they weren't happy with that. Well, some of us would go in there and we would take care of the symptom. And we would look a little further and find the problem and fix that problem. And then that office equipment would last 6 months until someone else said it would back. So the company was more into rewarding the technician who did the most calls and went in every 12 days to fix a call, as opposed to rewarding somebody who fix it and get it right for 6 months. So there was a little problem with, Peter again, what should be done when you go into the office. Now, where's it all going? This is going to food, believe it or not. Because when you get hungry. Growing up, what I ended up doing was, and also going, the job where I was on the road, I went to fast food. And that fixed the problem of being hungry. Later on, the older I got, you get the wives I got, the more I was thinking about the shape that I'm in, how do I fix that? And you start thinking about, okay, but let's not fix the symptom. Let's go to the problem. The problem is going to be the problem. And so I have done this road of education and this far what to do, what not to do. It kind of helped me out. One of this vegetarian and chicken and vegan. Still vegan. Local sheets, fish, and eggs. And so through that, we had to learn how to spice food. Because some of them vegan and vegetarian food was kind of lame. So we learned how to spice. We knew what Mexican, what spices to make it Mexican, what was added to make it Chinese and all this stuff. So now, when you talk about going back to fixing the problem, or going back to an indigenous way of eating, which is corned beef and squash, that hasn't been touched by the Monsanto, it hasn't been genetically engineered. Engineered to the point where there's hardly any nutrition left in the food. You start going back to original grains and seed that still have all the nutrition. And I still say that's pretty blank and stuff. So I know how to spice, and I'll add a little bit of spice to that. And so that's kind of a thing in working at a farm, learning about old foods, ancient foods, foods that are out there in nature that are better for you than fast food. And then you get into the process of actually growing something from a seed, and that whole process builds something in your house. If you've ever grown anything, you kind of, you know, the gratitude that you get from seeing a seed turn into a plant. Then if you eat the fruit from that plant, it's just, it almost tastes better than the maintenance, because you grew it, get the satisfaction from it, and you share it. You know, it's good somebody talking. So I'm trying to think if I'm answering your question here or not, but so how does food shape a community? If you go to the community and looking at the visitation, growing up, we weren't as, let's say, affluent as the reservation is now. So growing up, we were, and my family also, we were poor, but we didn't know it because we were getting hungry. We always had food. And we might not have had the clothes, but the clothes didn't have any holes. And then, because my mother was sewed up with those, so we're attaching. And community had small little gardens sitting there. And then once affluence started to come in, some of those gardens went away. Just by myself, and I was going up at the job. But before I got the job, I was out visiting my friends, and when I came home, I ate what was cooked for me, and I usually went between 2 slices of bread. That was my supper. which now I was the best thing for them. So the journey of bad food, eating a proper diet, not an older diet, and knowing that sugar is bad, wheat, rice, pasta, it's all starch, it basically turns into fat. You know, it's a tough switch to get away from that food. And the key, though, that I learned also with how much you eat. As people who are together from a long time ago, we ate when the food was available. Because we might not show up again. So we still overeat as the people. And I'm also learning that when your body can only process 300 calories per meal. And how much is that? How much at all? So we overeat. That's become. Yeah, getting back to the farm, we're trying to instill that idea of eating whole foods to the kid. Starting with the kid, you know, go back to the kid, because some of the older people, they're taught to change. That's what taught to change. So I think of what I'm on.
That was awesome. Thank you for that, the three of you. So earlier we're hearing from Karen Washington about this concept, this idea of food sovereignty. This is what we are speaking about today. And this story about the soup that follows you there. This story about how food sovereignty, it already exists and it's always existed in Haudenosaunee. And the knowledge is there. So I wanted to ask you, in your work, how are you engaging with the concept of food sovereignty? How are you embracing that concept, which is inherently, well, yeah, in the global south, grassroots communities, but it's really emerging from indigenous people's knowledge and engagement with nature and the land. So how are you engaging with the concept of food sovereignty, cultural restoration? In our little conversation earlier, we talked about seed sovereignty and regaining your culture through food. So how are you doing that?
Oh, okay. Well, what is food sovereignty? It's free food. Basically, I asked my husband, I said, what is food sovereignty? What do I say? You know, and he said, well, it's what was given to us simply by the Creator. He gave us everything we need to live on this earth. It's out there. It's acknowledging the land. So we also have to reestablish our relationship with our food. Get to know it. They're our relatives in our culture. They're all of our relatives and they're part of us. And as Curtis said, they are what we eat. I brought some props. Brought my three sisters. We got our corn, our beans, and for $1.35 our squash. What's the problem with this? When you put this on your plate, what's the problem? Do you know where this came from? Do you know the people who planted this? Do you know the days of the weeks that it was growing in this? You know, do you know the weather it endured to get to this can? I don't even know where it comes from. Our bees. I don't even know where it says it comes from. And our squash, one of the three sisters. So my relationship with these cans are nothing. I know there's a spirit in here because in our culture there's spirit in this food. But has it been touched by human hands? Has it been loved and cared for and nurtured? The way we're supposed to nurture our food. And so I think reestablishing our relationship with food by growing it ourselves, by learning about it, by learning our traditional food ways, our dishes. You know, I met somebody during lunch today and they're talking about fermenting greens, and we didn't do that. Maybe we could learn from each other, you know, sharing with everybody. So I think that's what food sovereignty talks about is definitely reestablishing your relationship with your food. I have a relationship with this food. This is the corn that I grew last year. And with this corn, I remember the day I put it in the ground. I remember the weather. I remember the bugs that were attacking me when I weeded it. It was part of a braid after I harvested it. So I remember braiding it, and we like to hang it from the rafters so it dries. This is tucked for white corn, and this is the corn that the soup is made out of. And it's a long process to create that soup. I remember asking somebody at OCC, do you have a recipe for that? And they laughed at me. Well, there's no recipe, you gotta learn. You have to learn how to make it, how to grow it. It's boiled in hardwood ashes. And a process called nixtamalization. I said it right. And so it breaks down the hard hull of each kernel. And it goes through a process of boiling it, and it turns to this beautiful bright orange when you do that. And then it turns back to white, which is pretty amazing that we had this chemistry in our culture, and we knew how to do that and how to create this relationship with this one plant. And so when we go to our ceremonies and we give thanks to these things, I think of those hot days where I'm in the dirt, just ripping up those weeds, trying to save this plant. And I think of the bee that just stung me yesterday, actually, right here, when I was, you know, unbraiding some corn. And all of those things put together gives me the gratitude and thanks. And it gives that address that I did meaning, in our dances meaning, in our songs meaning. I get emotional sometimes, sorry. So it's our relationship with our food is our love for our food, if that makes sense. And that's what food sovereignty is.
So, for the medicinal.
Right. And as Curtis was just saying, that the silk on this corn is for medicine. And it helps with diabetes. You know, you make a tea out of it. And so it's all these things, this indigenous knowledge that not just Haudenosaunee people know, but all across the country, there's different uses for just one plant. And so, yeah, it's always just being grateful and reestablishing the relation.
This way, right? Yes, it's me over here. Okay. So food sovereignty for me was something that I learned in academia. First time hearing it, again, from a third perspective, it was this idea of having ownership over your food. But in our culture, we don't own our food. And so my exploration into what food means to me and kind of the dynamic of why we have food as a transaction rather than as a community asset or something that we can give, a gift. And in my journey, I somehow found my way to the Nation Farm, met my best mentor, Angela Ferguson, who we can all probably talk very highly about, and learned for the first time about that gap in knowledge. And I think that we've all discussed it about learning, about knowledge, and about understanding the science that we've had for centuries, thousands of years, and reclaiming that. And not only reclaiming it, but promoting it and pushing it into modern day curriculum, modern day programming. My focus has always been on higher ed, and now primary and secondary and museums, but really on creating spaces, using food as a vessel for some sort of social change. Whether it be people learning how to garden or seeing seeds for the first time, or maybe people meeting indigenous people for the first time, even finding spaces in these communities to build something that then the community can take ownership over, like I have been able to do on these universities that I work with. Creating the space for the first time where our seeds can be safe and the knowledge with the seeds can be promoted and accepted and used nowadays. And what we find often this divide in education between traditional knowledge and academic knowledge. And that was kind of my push with food, was to continue using this vessel that brings us all together, but in a way where we can all learn. And not learn from a textbook and not learn from a video, but learn from each other. And learn from our elders, because this knowledge does need to be passed down. And where I find myself is in that bridge, in a sense, between learning from my elders, also being able to build opportunities and create spaces for our youth to then learn this, like I wasn't able to. So the best thing that I can give back for food sovereignty and learning how to eat and grow food myself and be able to take care of myself is also being able to pass this on and be able to create opportunities where our youth can get exposed to this at a younger age, because it has ramifications throughout our life, through our nutrition, our community health, our economic opportunities. All of these revolve around food in a sense. And food is also a very powerful tool to get conversations going with people from children, all the way up to our elders, all the way up to politicians, representatives like we're seeing today, people gathering from all over the place around this unifying idea of food. And so for me, sovereignty is often used in a political sense or territorial sense, but for food sovereignty, it's that communal sense. And that's kind of where I work to do, is to decommodify food and give it away, and also figure out how to sustain myself on both sides of the fence. And it was my way of learning about my culture, because for us, we have our language, we have our food, and our land. And I was able to connect to all three of them through food. And that was always my focus, of being able to then learn about the rest of my culture and feel welcomed, and to find mentors in my community that also want to push this and welcome me in, and meeting friends that I haven't known that lived right down the road from me, and being able to have a meal with them and discuss our growing up and what we've done in the community and how things have changed and what we can keep doing now that we have leadership roles and power to do this. So my biggest mission with these gardens that I do, but also with these opportunities, is to really push that knowledge as to humanize that beyond textbooks, beyond literature, beyond past perspectives. But I want to create living installations that show our culture, that we're more resilient than we have been before, and that our ways continue and our knowledge continues to pass on despite everything that could get in the way. And so that's kind of a gift that from my ancestors, acknowledging the work that they've been able to do, for my ability to be able to reclaim this knowledge, and then for my ability to then pass it on, is that experience that I like to have with people in the garden.
Curtis, do you want to add to that?
No, I want to add to that, I want to take a tangent into that. The question is, in your work, how do you engage with the topic of food sovereignty? Sovereignty is power. The power to grow your own food, harvest your own food, without any policy. There's another power that is called economic. I'm part of SOFSA, and Laura always likes to ask me to run the group by attending a Zoom meeting with words from basically my culture. But grounding is another thing from Laura. What is an electrical force of that? Copier, printer, all use the earth as ground in order for electricity to flow. And some of you may know, we have electricity in us. Maybe 20 volts is considered in the measured spot for 20 volts. And holistic teachers will tell you to go outside and stand in the dirt. Ground yourself. Stand in the dirt barefoot. And just let Mother Earth take away your inhibition and your problem. Just let it flow through so that you can be the person that you actually are without dwelling on life's problems. So it doesn't happen automatically. But I've been reading like it's not that you have to be out there for at least an hour standing in the dirt. But if you're playing in the field and you get your shoes on, it's going to take more than an hour to do. And then, in the end of it, you can come around and then you've left your problems in the dirt. So, there's another thing called roofing. We don't know what it is. It's, I don't know, it's new. It's becoming where it's a healing process if you ground yourself. And all I'll say is just look it up. Earthing. It might be good for you.
Thank you, Curtis, for that tangent. Okay, so we have 2 more questions to go, but maybe we'll lump this next 2 and then we'll kind of get the conversation going. If people also want to raise their hands and join in the conversation and ask questions, please feel free to do so. So Ethan was just talking about how important it is for knowledge to be passed and for traditions to continue and for this oral histories and the stories that you're talking about, the Longhouse and these beautiful stories you're telling us. So one of the things we wanted to talk about is how to do that. Why is it so important today to bring more visibility to Indigenous groups? Why do we need that so much today? And how do we do that? How do we educate and empower ourselves, yourselves, and our communities, your communities, our loved ones, to get involved in traditional foods and to feel empowered by Indigenous wisdom? So I'll have a food story.
Okay, gosh, that's a loaded question. I have to say that growing up, I never learned about my cultures because my parents couldn't teach me. But who could teach me was school system, and they didn't teach me. We were kind of like a chapter in the book, this like Native American chapter, and you see it today. My daughter's history teacher skipped the entire Native American section of the social studies book 2 years ago. We don't even learn it, and that's Lafayette, where mostly Native people go. So I think we need to revamp the educational system. Maybe not, it's not up to us, it's up to the outside community. You know, revamp your educational system for it, please. Because, you know, within our society, we don't vote. We have our own system of government and we follow our own laws and traditions, and we don't take part in the outside, for the most part, in the outside communities voting system. So it's up to you guys. I also think that it's important to get to the kids first. Kids are they're sponges and they want to learn this stuff. And, you know, I go out to the outside community sometimes to share our culture and they just love it. And I love the fact that they love it. And it makes me want to share more. And so I think we as Indigenous people need more outreach, because sometimes people say, well, how do we get in touch with them? How do we get in touch with Native people? you know, and I think traditionally we're very closed up, you know, because the people around us have been trying to get at our stuff and change us and take our language and take our traditions and put us in boarding school and that, you know, not to be so negative, but it created a very closed society. So I think we're healing now. We're at that point where we're really starting to heal with the younger generations. And so I think it's time for us to say, okay, let's open up just a little bit and share some of these things, because I think a lot of our knowledge is universal to all people, not just our people. And so I think going to the children in the schools, and we just need to become more familiar faces by coming to things like this. And I see familiar faces out there, and I hope to be a familiar face in the future. That's what I gotta say.
How much time do we have?
We're good. I'll definitely stop you.
Okay. Yeah, it's Sarah, so the quite a loaded question here. You indicate and all our response. I'm the oldest one up here, so I remember that when I didn't want to be involved with this, they call them not a recitation, but presentation. Because the history is not a good history when you talk about Native people and company. What happened to us because of the story. Boarding schools, what happened there. Taking and went to save the child. So the nation cut the doors. Else said, just kept us going. They said we didn't need a whole man's education because your education is right here with a ceremony. And it's in the language. Your education is in the language. So at time when I would say when Black Lives Matter came off, they started thinking about, oh, there's other followers out there to say, wow. And people started coming to the nation and trying to get involved. Here's that, we have this for you, we have this for you. And the other nation doesn't accept any federal money or state money, common money for that matter. Because of the strings that were attached when they saw other nations accepting the money. So they said, no, we're not going to do that. However, when people kept competing and started asking us, what's your opinion there and that? Then it was coming, oh, this word of consultation. Consultation used to be, this is what we're going to do. Just letting you know. No conversation happened. I'm talking about TV, city, and state. But lately, it's like, this is what we're going to do. What do you think? So now conversations are happening. And within those conversations, that's one of the reasons why I became part of SOFSA, was to have a seat at the table, to be part of decisions that are being made. So, yeah, God has opened up, started coming out to be in different places. People are learning our way. I shouldn't say learning our way. People are getting a hint of our ways because we still don't want to teach our ways. Our ceremony, hours only. Ceremony is closed when we do things out, when we dance is done. Non-native people, they're not ceremonial events. They're dances that we share. So we still keep our culture and knowledge and to ourselves. But our libraries now are elders. And when an elder passes away, we take a lot with them. So we're trying to instill in process where you get a bunch of elders together and like just sit them down and say, okay, what do you want to tell? What do you want to read as far as culture? That you got to pinpoint the elders and sort of what we're talking about. Otherwise, we're talking about. So you got to pinpoint what are the culture. And then they'll answer and they'll give some traditional knowledge in there. And it's a good thing because they're great grandkids will eventually, instead of looking at a picture, so here's your great grandmother. Now you have a video, now you have the voice, now you have the instructions in how you talk and how you laugh. So that's what we're trying to bring to back to our library and such films, videos, and we're working on it. Because back in the day, videotaping and recording them to set is not all the way. The original is not all the way. If you wanted to learn something verbally, medicinal, you go and live with that person for 6 months, 9 months, a year. They will teach you. That's how you know. You don't talk to a microphone. So,
mhm. Yeah. So going back to the core of that is where I use food is for education. My project was really based on this idea of not just looking at the way that our culture observes things, but also the methodology of how we think about foods, of how we use foods, of how we integrate food into our social settings, into our conversations, into the way that we raise people. And for me, I was very interested in looking at this methodology as a system, as a food system, and trying to change both while getting a degree, but also pushing back against what I was told I should do, or what I was told that I needed to do to have a career or to be successful or to get return on investment for the time I spent in higher ed. But for me, what was more valuable was trying to find an example of how to do things differently, of pushing against the grain, but in a way that's communal, in a way that doesn't push back on people, no matter what their backgrounds are. Going into higher education, I experienced a lot of my community and a lot of Indigenous students that came from all over the country suffer and have a hard time integrating into a campus life. And over my time at SU, I started in IT, or engineering, switched to IT, now I'm in food. I got to experience what it was like to build a community around our students and what it was like to sustain this within the academic setting. And SU is an interesting case study where we have those opportunities, we have those resources, and we have that community setting, but there still is that lack of breaking into other communities, of bringing the greater Syracuse community in, of bringing people from outside in, of being able to share, like you were saying, finding that middle ground where we're not tokenizing ourselves or we're not looking as a third perspective or us talking at you, but we're able to share in what we share together, and that methodology, and share that idea of how we approach things, both in government, in politics, in our economy, in our food, in our family discussion, of finding ways for me to experience this as well, because I had to leave my community to learn about it. And then to go back with this knowledge, I still face some abrasion sometimes from older generations, not understanding why I left, or not understanding why I never came back, or just in a sense of worrisome, or like that barrier that was there. But when I bring the same people to these gardens and show them the work that I'm doing and have them participate in this, and some elders have even planted their own seeds before. I've been able to travel across the country to do the same thing, creating spaces so that we can partake in these ways and then have that dialogue and share that knowledge and make it more usable and mainstream, just common sense in a sense. And what these spaces were meant to do was to start that discussion and then go from there. Something about wanting to leave a legacy or an impact, a tangible difference, rather than reading a paper or discussing other people's opinions or having journals published in articles published in journals that you have to pay to read. I have to pay to read my own articles. That doesn't make sense. And the knowledge that I am working on, the knowledge that I learn, I don't want it to be trapped in academia. I wanted to create this bridge so that it can be shared back to the people who need it most. Because there's a lot of people back home for me who are in the same situation. We haven't been able to learn about our culture. But when we go into these institutions to learn about our history, it's often looked back in the past. And so where are we at now? We are modern. Like, we continue to change and adapt. Our communities have grown. Our communities have prospered. Every community has its own issues. And a lot of that things start with that healing process. And with healing around food, it's that nutrition, that discussion, sovereignty, all these themes that we're pulling together is a methodology. And it's a way that we're able to introduce these concepts to people. And that's why I love food so much, because it is that universal methodology. In the end of the day, we all want to eat. And when one of us is suffering, we're all suffering in a sense, because we're not able to contribute in the same way. And so if I can make a space that's safe for future Indigenous students who might not venture in higher ed, that is a successful mission. That is something that we need, because our communities need higher ed. We need doctors, we need medical people, we need scientists, we need engineers, we need these people. And while we start, and there's a lot of programs for funding, we also need to support our students, all backgrounds, universally and specifically, and find ways to have that cross-communal touch, to be able to learn from the backgrounds of other people from across the world, to learn about our Indigenous communities across the world, and share that knowledge, but also not just share between us, but share it in an academic setting. Share in a sense that someone might come by and want to include that in their present research and their future research, or make these opportunities where students can research in our ways, using their backgrounds. No matter what background you're in, you all revolve around food in some way. We can all tie back to that. And so even though people question why I went from IT to food, I can tell them I like system, and food is a system. And so it was just one that I thought needed a little touch, and I just so happened to like food a lot. And so in the end, I think a lot of sovereignty relies on this transfer of knowledge and that creating the bridge between that. And so my hope is to be able to start in higher ed, to change even a little bit of a mindset for future teachers, and for them to pass on that experience. Not necessarily the knowledge or history or all the negative stuff that we dwell in, but their experience, that personal experience that you had, and how you can relate to that. Because the same educators that are doing that will educate the next generation of educators, who then come into higher education knowing that they were able to experience this type of stuff and that they can contribute to that. And in the end, even though we're only there for 4 years, you can make an impact on that land, and you can acknowledge that land. And that is something that I think the gardens are so good for, is bringing people together and grounding them in the university, of beyond a land acknowledgement, beyond verbal, oral, something that was tangible that you could interact with and understand why this is important that we grow our foods here, and why it's important that these seeds return here in a safe and meaningful way, in a way that can contribute to research and our cultural and knowledge production for future generations, and to break down that stigma and make alternative knowledge more important, because it's the stuff that we've lived off of for centuries. I mean, we're talking about nixtamalization. That's a technology that we've known for thousands of years. Now it has a fancy name to it, but it's stuff that we've known, it's stuff that we shared and taught visitors how to eat. We've taught them about agriculture. We've been able to have our knowledge embedded in almost every, even up to government. is modeled after a lot of our methodology. And so I think for me, using food and trying to create the system that empowers our youth to want to eat better, to learn more about food, to help their families change the direction that we're in, to help our children understand that we can start at the kitchen table, but we can also start in the garden. And we can take that seed and go all the way to another seed. And then the next year, take those seeds, just as Sarah was saying, of knowing the food that you plant. The first year that I had a garden on my rooftop, I was able to grow about 24 cobs of the Cherokee glass gem corn. It looks like pillows. Out of a whim, just hope and just a lot of work and a lot of time in the garden or on the rooftop. And you can create these spaces and it'll happen. And that's what I kind of like to do, is just using gardens and seeds to create spaces and see what happens. Because every space is unique and every people have different impressions and different experiences and needs. And as we continue to add in more universities and primary schools, secondary schools, we can start to create the system and change the way that people are introduced to Indigenous culture. That we're not in the past, we're not textbooks, we're not artifacts, we're not paintings, but we're a living, breathing people, and we continue to live by our ways and methodology. So that's the.
Thank you, Ethan. That was really beautiful and also a great way for opening it up to questions. Thank you so much for the stories and the wisdom shared. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that you talk. My forte been, I think before you. And it's being here, presentation of the parent. Instead of looking for the parent, I find the inhumanity that exists in the still exists. So when I say people, I mean proper education, always correct. Brought up the death of wolves. That was a kind of inhumane. Now the Aboriginal, listen to me, Aboriginal indigenous people. We lost them. Because we did stuff first. They came here, stole our bodies, stole our minds, stole our culture, stole our system, particularly food system. People can come here and learn about those patterns. We knew it. Brought us over here and integrated us into a system that was not provided for us. So one of the main things that needs to happen in the education you talk about is to start with the truth. Start with what happened first. And start with the fact that there needs to be a concerted effort by the power that be to corrupt the mistake of man. Then and now.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
They don't say that we didn't come here, we don't want to, because they know it. Everything we got going on in this agricultural system is because of the reason is capitalism. You gotta give a system that can take our whole life, and you're not choosing, give it to black, and then they take it away. You're very full of black food. That's why.
We're going to pass it the mic here for this one question. I'm going to ask you to be brief. Thank you all for Chair. Thank you so much for being here. Just wanted to not even some of the questions, maybe more like more of the perspective of your culture. It was so phenomenal, and we were lucky enough to we spent some time with members from this is out in Mexico. It's very different. Some time with Santa Clara Fuego, time Indians up there, and we cooked with them, and spent time with them and learned. They sort of invited us in, to their home and their culture, which we were just so appreciative of. Something, I just said the perspective in your communities and your culture. Something, we all just made compost food. Also honoring the waste or not wasting. It was salmon, that was one thing that like when we were cooking and it was together, my mom and I was like, oh, do you want to compost seed crap? What do you do with them? And to our surprise, we said, throw them. And so that was part of the landfill, just like didn't make sense to me. So anyway, it's like your perspective in your own culture, like the sort of like not wasting anything. Is that something that is part of like in your own home, in your community, that is part of this philosophy?
I can.
Thanks.
So when you were saying that, I was thinking about that old commercial in the '70s of the native guy. And somebody throws garbage out the window and you see a single tear going down his face. And that's kind of like a stereotype of us. Not all of us are environmental. Not all of us share the importance of composting. I mean, we're like anybody else, I compost, personally, and I like to recycle, and I think about, my carbon footprint. I went to Standing Rock and stood up for, I guess the pipeline over there, but not all of us do that. So I guess maybe that answers your question a little bit, we're just regular people. With, we go to Wegmans, we go to McDonald's, and and we're not all, I think we're all individuals, I should say. Yeah.
And on like we do have a transfer station. Where, again, we had every family had their own little bird behind their house. You take your garbage and we buy it. And then that switched around back in your, I would say back in the 70s. You were, but in the 70s, it switched at a transfer station. Every month I was given a blue boxes to separate plastics and cardboard. And then we had a kind of area that went into a dumpster that went directly to the landfill. But and then we had the off-nation recyclers come and take that and process it where they go. We paid for that. And then we also had the electronics, which is toxic. And they kind of take that also. Part of our transportation. We do not have a communal place where we can make compost. Individual family like that or even big compost. In order for us to do it as a nation, if we were told we don't have enough compost to invest in equipment, we would have to import supplies to make enough compost for people to put in their garden. Now look at this 2 months is right. Question for every day. No. Do you? The answer is vote. You vote for people who are in positions of power. We don't want them there. Don't vote for them.
I think also reflecting back on just the current state of the world is like consumerism and the consumers' behaviors that we unfortunately globally have become used to. And I think that even in our communities, yes, we have traditions and it's different all around on how we protect the environment, how we involve ourselves with it, and how do we talk about sustainability in the essence of climate change. and the global crisis that we're in. I think a lot of it goes back to also that we were torn from this, is that this is normal. I grew up in a consumerist world where we just throw stuff out. We can see news reports all over the world of other countries being in worse situations. And then we look at them like, why aren't they doing anything? And that's because this is the bottom rung of the consumerist ladder. And changing that mentality, yes, it starts in the individual, and there's a lot of policy that you can do and groundswell and get people going, but a lot of it is helping with communities to understand this, because I also had to learn about composting and recycling, because I never grew up in that world, and a lot of people didn't, because it's something that we have lost because of the overall system that we're participating in. And going back to methodology again, I think that that was the biggest mindset, just figuring out what can I do to help in the way that's meaningful to me and the people around me, and not try to take on the world, because we need a lot of people to do that. But by leading with an example and showing this, and showing how communities can take these initiatives and slowly heal, how does it scale? And how can we start bringing this to other communities and other people within our communities? Because we're all individuals, and so we all can pick or nitpick each other's contributions to the greater problem, but also we can offset those, literally, and not just figuratively, by actually taking action.
And we're gonna take one more question, and then we're going to thank the board.
We can talk all day, so.
Yeah. You should have brought beans and throw it on the shelf.
I guess my question is, for those of us who want to honor our natives, the community, and partner with our food system, and that would like to do better, what can I do to be more mindful and really support and to be a good neighbor, and if somebody has some level of power and influence in our local food system, you have words of wisdom for me and us who are in this room.
So my husband is a teacher at SUNY ESF. He's an indigenous teacher, and he gets a lot of his questions, such as yours. And his answers simply, it's a little shocking, but his answer is give us our land back.
Yeah, I had one of the anecdote. I had a friend who said, this is not a native one. He said, now that we're friends, I can tell you this Indian joke. And I was like, no. Now that we're friends, you should know not to say that Indian joke. So it's mindset. It's who you are, where you come from. If you can get into white privilege, you can get into prejudice and all this. It goes back to Paul Workshop. There's a thing called equity. It teaches us how we're supposed to teach each other, associate with each other. And it's a simple thing. You know, it's teach other, not teach, but treat others the way you want to be treated. It's as simple as that. So to answer your question, a lot of it is just approach many people on a humble level, on a human level. More here, I always say that we had these emails. And below your name and email, it's a statement of this wrong, and those are who you want. Even that. And talk to us on the human level. Because we're coming from the idea that nature is the problem. And all of which are our brothers. And if you're going to make a decision, a road or something, being built, think about your brothers and sisters that you're going to destroy. Think about it. I'm not saying that the road shouldn't go in, but think about what you're doing. Do you go out of the way when you see a woolly bear on the road while, or do you run over? Do you feel sorry for the dead raccoon on the road, or a dead fox? Those are the brothers.
Adding another little thing, going back to, I was in the Micron panels. And we talked a lot about land use and slightly about land stewardship, but I think land stewardship is where we should focus on if you think about how to contribute to where you are. Necessarily, there are indigenous communities all over the country, but there are also indigenous people who don't have communities, who are existing and who also have a lot of knowledge to share. And often it feels hard to approach us because it feels like it's tokenizing or that we're preaching to the crowd. And then where do you go with that? And I think for me, stewardship is the route to go. If you aren't able to access these communities or you don't know anyone in there, how can you at home steward the land like our ancestors did? And think about where these people were. Think about how this land has changed. I often like looking at old geographic maps of towns and seeing how they've grown, but also looking beyond that and seeing what was there before. And thinking about that when you do interact with the land, when you do decide to build something, when you do decide to change, or in the community, if there's something going up, raise that question of how does it steward the land? Not just land use and how we'll utilize it and maybe for more sustainability, but how will they steward it in acknowledgement of the people before, there, presently, and afterwards, so that we can start changing that mentality in our youth again, and it's teaching the youth, necessarily not directing them to an indigenous person, but those teachings are universal. And I mean, we can say go read a book, but in reality, the best thing to do is go discuss this with people. If you have indigenous neighbors nearby, talk to them around food again. Food is the best discussion tool to start these things with. But a lot of that mentality that I try to hold on to is stewardship. Whether it be me living in this urban jungle, trying to figure out how to grow a tomato in the sky, or if I'm on a rural land and I have access to more land than any of my family has, how do I take care of that and not just use it? How do I steward it? How do I steward my life? How do I steward my job? How do I steward the knowledge I pass on or the activities I teach my children? How do I get them to cook? How do I get them to do chores? And it's not that stewardship mentality of being like, well, these are the chores that your grandparents and that I did, and now you get to do them. Stuff like that. And that's kind of the mentality that I like to approach these types of tasks, because education isn't just a one-off thing. It isn't just finished, it continues. You got to steward that in any way that you can.
Thank you. I think you all leave us with a lot of reflections and things that we need to bring back to our families and our own communities. And I want to say I'm incredibly honored to be able to moderate this panel. And I thank you for your wisdom and your time and your stories to share with us. And thank you all for joining us today. Let's thank our panelists. Thank you.